So, looking in Illumination to finish that section, page 181, jumping a couple pages. The objection, there's a question here of what does mind mean? The view of the transitory views either I or mine as inherently existing. We only talked about viewing I as inherently existing. But Candrakīrti very clearly mentions in this stanza and then in his commentary, viewing the mind as inherently existing. And things that are mine are things that are mine or considered to be mine are included within my continuum, right? Mind, body, and even though my hair is short, not all of my hair. And this is, because it has no feeling, is not included within the continuum. So even, never mind clothes, we also drape ourselves with things that are not in our continuum. That has no particular meaning. And then there's mine that's not included within the continuum. This stuff, this book is mine, right? So this qualm is built around then the mine are these things, body, or in this different positions are held on this. Just these things alone aren't enough to be mine, they have to be considered to be mine, to be included in the category of mine. But then why is the view of the transitory limited to a conception of a self of persons? Why wouldn't it also include conception of self of phenomena? So that's the basic qualm. If it also refers to these things. So some people say it refers to the I that's involved in owning these. Not to the things, but to the I that's involved in owning them. Not that the term mine refers to I, but that when we speak of conceiving of the inherently, the view of the transitory that conceives of mind to be inherently existing, we're talking about that I that owns. Now some other people, Jayasheva namely, considers mind itself to be person, the I as owner, the Nayir Chebabo, the one that makes things into mind. It's very strange that he defines it that way, since the mind then should be the things. But anyway, he takes Nayua to be a person. And I find all of these very interesting. There definitely is a different type of I that owns things, and it's more active. It's something, one of my old teachers used to move his hands out a little bit like this, right? So Tsong-kha-pa is not entirely clear in his answer on what he says they must be viewed as mine, but then he's not entirely clear, and thus there come to be these other assertions. Then on page 182, there's a question of whether Indian Buddhism speaks, Indian Madhyamaka or Indian Prāsaṅgika speaks of seeing emptiness, perceiving emptiness. Something like the wisdom realizing emptiness are these terms you can actually find in India. Way on early in the class we talked about people shying away from calling this state a mind that realizes something because you get a sense of duality. And here are some quotes where we talk about seeing reality in the first. The second one, when the two aspects of selflessness are seen. The fourth one, when self is seen in objects. But you can say, well, those are just conventions. And there's no such thing as seeing emptiness. Of course, that's not Tsong-kha-pa's point. Then on the last page, 183, there is again this division in the 1, 2, 3 section of conceptual consciousnesses as being divided into 3 types. Those that consider the object to be truly established or inherently existent, those that consider that it is not truly existent, and those that don't qualify it as either. You're just paying attention to the door. I'm just pointing this out. Okay, enough fun. That finishes up. Now, with regard to one of the readings for next time, the Prāsaṅgikas school on true existence, Anne Klein uses the word thought for conceptuality. And at one point, both of us thought that this would be a good idea, but I since dropped that because when we speak of Sangyeki Gongba, the thought of Buddha, Buddhist thought, then to call Dokpa thought didn't leave you much room. There are other times when Gongba can mean intention, and I say most scholars have mistaken it to mean intention when it just plain means thought. It's the honorific for Samba. Anyway, you need to understand that her word thought is my word conceptuality. Takes care of that. Wow! Betsy Napper. It was tremendously helpful when we were reading the text that's in the rear, because you had 4 sets of annotations on the same lines. And so you'd get one of the annotations would be before the line, then you'd read the line, then you'd read the annotation after the line, and you couldn't miss it by then. How helpful it is in English, I don't know.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm not exactly sure who the proponents of true existence are. Are they the Swatantrikas or are they other people as well?
Vaibhashika, Sautantrika, and Chidamata.
Okay,
Not the Swatantrikas. There are contexts in which the term Bhavavada, Nirmala, can be extended to Swatantrika. But generally speaking, it refers to the other 3. So, what's the uncommon feature of Madhyamaka? When Tsong-kha-pa begins his chapter with the uncommon feature of Madhyamaka, she says it is to qualify the object of negation with the term inherently. Both Swatantrika and Madhyamaka refute true existence. This is the Gelugpa claim. Refute true existence, but the Prāsaṅgikas say that only they refute inherent existence. Okay? But you still haven't gotten the uncommon feature of Madhyamaka.
The feasibility of all agents and actions within a complete absence of inherent existence.
Yes. The feasibility of all agents and actions, and so forth. What do the proponents of true existence, that's the translation for Bhavavada, what's their position about inherent existence? Either they exist inherently or they don't exist at all. And What about the Tibetan Madhyamakas that Tsong-kha-pa is criticizing? What is their basic idea? Either things exist inherently, or they don't exist at all. Same view. He criticizes the Tibetan fake Madhyamakas for having the same view as the proponents of true existence. The same basic idea. Either exist inherently or not exist. Which side, that's the basic principle. He's saying that the fake Madhyamakas have the same principle, are working from the same principle as the proponents of true existence. Which side do the proponents of true existence come down on? Exist inherent. Which side do the fake Madhyamaka proponents come down on? Not exist. So you see, they accept that things don't exist inherently. Thus they draw the conclusion that things don't exist. The proponents of true existence don't accept, well, what he said. They say, well, things have to exist, therefore they exist inherently. So what he's accusing them of is having the same basic idea, even though they come down on different sides of that, equation? I don't know what you call it. It's a very clever way of accusing something. You're supposed to have some great superior thought, idea within Madhyamaka. It turns out you have the same idea, same idea as the non-Madhyamakas. You're even worse, in a sense, because you're falling to extreme nihilism. Whereas for Tsong-kha-pa, the basic principle is the feasibility of everything, the existence of everything, within no inherent existence. That's the distinctive Madhyamaka view. And particularly, it reaches its consummation in Prāsaṅgikas. That's the basic thing he's talking about here. So he has to show that for Nagarjuna, Buddhapalita, and Candrakīrti particularly, there is a compatibility of emptiness and dependent arising. But he has to be, this has to be, and he does show this very clearly, and that this means the existence of things. Despite all of these statements of doesn't exist, doesn't not exist, doesn't both exist, not exist, doesn't neither exist nor not exist. It's like despite these famous statements in Sutra, that this is, or he's pointing out that we have to be able to interpret what Sutra is saying, okay? His basic idea that they have thrown away the uncommon feature of Madhyamaka. The thing that makes you a Madhyamaka, you see? These people who claim to be Madhyamakas don't have. Now, one problem is that all of the other schools can't differentiate between existence and inherent existence. Okay? Therefore, they won't say, doesn't such a thing inherently exist? They'll just say it exists. Then it gets to be a huge problem to find out, do they really say that things inherently exist? For them, inherent existence and existence are conflated, confused, okay? Whereas Prāsaṅgikas can make this difference. Can you make the difference? We analyzed. No. And we all fell to an extreme nihilism, did we not? We couldn't distinguish between the absence of inherent existence and the absence of existence. It not only began to look, it did look as if there was no coming and going. After all, we were searching for coming and going under these conditions, and we weren't finding them, okay? And so it looked to us as if then coming and going didn't exist. So this distinction between existence and inherent existence, although we can say the words, we have to recognize we don't know what it is. Right? We don't know it. And it may be a fake distinction. Some people may be wrong. Okay? But anyway, this is what he says, and all of his followers say over and over again. But you have to keep remembering that we don't know this distinction. We can say it in words, we can keep track of what people are saying, but it's not like some obvious thing. That, oh, well, of course things don't inherently exist, but they exist, right? Because we ourselves, I mean, that's how you look into inherent existence, just what we were doing. And we were all getting the conclusion out of this, you know, like, did you say, doesn't make you feel sad or something lonely? You say, yes. And this Dalai says, it's like losing something you had. But then as you get used to it, it's each time that you examine and analyze, it's like finding some treasure you had lost. But that's for people who are, right, more used to, you know, have somehow taken it further. It's very important to recognize that we don't know the difference. In these other schools, there are mere shreds of evidence that they assert that objects inherently exist. Shreds of them. But you see, that's the genius. Out of shreds, find basic positions. I say, well, why did the proponents of true existence, so-called proponents of true existence, argue against the Madhyamakas? And you'd say, well, they thought the Madhyamakas were nihilists. You guys look like nihilists. Well, that's because, you see, they conflate existence and inherent existence. And if you refute one, you refuting the other, just as we did. They can't tune into the uncommon distinctive feature of Madhyamaka. They can't tune into it. You must be able to find things upon this sort of analysis. So then, it becomes incumbent, given the fact that Nagarjuna had a book of 27 chapters, and 25 of them are so utterly negative, right? Just doing what we were doing. At the end of that chapter, it doesn't say, well, going, it doesn't even say something like going, object going over, and goer arise dependent upon each other. It doesn't even say that. In the chapter on agent and action, as I remember, there is such a statement, although that one isn't hauled out. It's the 24th chapter on the Four Truths that's hauled out, as we'll be seeing it, where Nagarjuna says, some Buddhist says, if everything's empty, then the Four Noble Truths don't exist. Nagarjuna answers back, if everything's not empty, Four Noble Truths don't exist. Within non-emptiness, and he says, within emptiness, everything is feasible. 27 chapters they found this. But they did. So if you look on page 181, does Nagarjuna assert even merit and wisdom? You see? Through this virtue may all beings, upon accumulating collections of merit and wisdom, attain the two excellences. These are the form and truth bodies of a Buddha. So you see, he accepts that there are form bodies. So you have to scrounge around, even within Nagarjuna's writings, to that arise, he says. He's showing causation. The attainment of the truth body depends upon the collection of wisdom, and the attainment of form bodies depend upon the collection of merit. Okay. So then, middle of 183, here's that one I was just mentioning in the 24th chapter. If all of these are empty, this proponent of true existence, this is a Buddhist saying to Nagarjuna, hoi, hoi, you got to accept the Four Noble Truths. That's basic to Buddhism. If all these are empty, there'll be no arising, no disintegration will follow that for you, you jerk Nagarjuna, the Four Noble Truths would not exist. And a similar objection, more or less, is in the refutation of objections. The proponent of inherent existence says, oh, you're claiming that nothing has inherent existence. Then what about your words? Well, you're refuting everybody. Do they have inherent existence or not? Oh, if they do, then your thesis that nothing has inherent existence is out the window. If they don't, then they can't do anything. Just as we were thinking. We can't find going under these conditions, we can't go anywhere. Right? Because there wasn't some other going that appeared to our minds that would be compatible with not finding going the way we were looking. Compatible! Not forgetting about it. We've done that, right? Very quickly, for the most part. Oh, let's go to the movies, right after doing the analysis. But sometimes on the way to the movie, you're thinking, are you really going? And he says, what's wrong with you? If an inherent existence of all things does not exist in anything, then your words also are without inherent existence and cannot refute inherent existence. That means if things are without inherent existence, they can't function. And that's exactly what we thought. You got to understand that. It's not like some, oh yeah, night and day, of course. You know, oh, they're so dumb. You know? It's really great that we did that analysis, isn't it? So in 184, the second stanza, in that, and this is somebody's commentary that adds in system. It could mean for that person, for whom emptiness is suitable, all is suitable. We don't have to get the word system in there, because there are some people who like to say Madhyamakas have no system. For that person for whom emptiness is not suitable, nothing is suitable. Nothing is possible. Nothing can exist. So Candrakīrti says, very bottom of the page, but also all presentations of the truths, that means of the four truths, and so forth, are very correct, very feasible. So, right in the middle of 185, therefore the present day proposition, he's talking about Tibet, so it's around 1400. 1390, 1395, I don't know. By those who claim to propound the meaning of the Buddha way, claim to be Madhyamakas, their proposition that causes and effects are necessarily not suitable within an absence of inherent existence is the system of the proponents of true existence. You have that which arises dependently we explain as emptiness. It's in Gelugpa terms, is this emptiness? It arises dependently, right? Is it emptiness?
There is the emptiness of the chalk.
There is an emptiness of the chalk. Answer my question. Is this emptiness? Is this piece of chalk emptiness? Even an emptiness. Is it? Yes or no? No. Ah, Nagarjuna said, that which arises dependently we explain is emptiness. Therefore it must be. But then you have to posit his meaning. Okay, he's right. In Gelugpa terms, this can't be emptiness. Otherwise, since you know the chalk, you'd know emptiness. Right? But it's just empty of inherent existence. So every object has an emptiness, which means, just as we didn't find going, there's this quality with everything. Really? Wow. But you see, we're thinking of emptiness as canceling everything. Because just like this, you can't find it. What does it cancel? What's left over? If it doesn't cancel going itself, how does it not cancel going itself? What's the going that's left? How could you even point to it? As we said, inherent existence is pointability. It's a wild idea to think that with everything there is an emptiness, right? This analytical unfindability with everything. And we're not paying attention to this quality, therefore we get screwed up with respect to these things. You pay attention to this quality of things, including yourself, your own mind, body, everybody else, and so forth. Mind gradually becomes purified. That emptiness is dependent designation, just as the middle path. Because there is no phenomenon that is not a dependent arising, there is no phenomenon that is not empty. Phenomenon is chur, dharma. Here it means that which has or holds its own entity. For whom emptiness is possible, all objects are possible. For whom emptiness is not possible, nothing is possible. 188. More exposition by Candrakīrti, beginning at the bottom of the page. For instance, on 189, first new paragraph. When suffering exists, the sources of, for instance, Sutra says, this cup doesn't exist, doesn't non-exist, doesn't both exist and non-exist, and neither exist nor non-exist. So you wonder, did Nagarjuna ever affirm the existence of anything? Maybe he avoided the word existence somehow. Actually, you can do a hunt for the word existence. And for instance, he says in the Precious Garland, when there is long, there's short. He uses sati, the locative absolute, or us, right? So when they're refuting existence, maybe it does mean that they're refuting a certain type of existence. So when suffering exists, the source of suffering, cessation of suffering, past progression, cessation of suffering are suitable. They exist. He goes on to talk about it. He goes through the four truths. In the middle paragraph, he says, therefore, the three jewels, Buddha, doctrine, and spiritual community, are also suitable. All special realizations of all mundane and supermundane topics are also suitable, as well as the proper and improper, the effects of the proper and improper, and all worldly convention. So Nagarjuna's own commentary on the refutation of objections, the bottom of page 190, last new paragraph. Similarly, my words are also dependent arisings, and therefore are without inherent existence. Because they are just without inherent existence, that they are said to be empty is correct. I like this next one, because he tells you what the functions of these things are. It's, sort of standard functions, because pots, woolen cloth, and so forth are dependent arising. They are empty of inherent existence, but are able to hold and receive honey. It's good, What's the standard view on what's the function of a pot? You know, a lot of things, but it's good to know the main one. Jar, right? Water and milk soup. So that's what pots and jars do, right? And for woolen cloth to thoroughly protect from cold, wind, and sun. Just so, my words also, because of being dependent arisings or without inherent existence. It's almost like the only way you can accept this is not to analyze. Did the pot begin holding the honey before you pour it in? After you poured it in? While you poured it in? That sounds good, doesn't it? It seems like the only way you can accept dependent arising is not to analyze. But you're supposed to analyze, you see? There's this great feasibility of the total eradication of inherent existence with dependent arising. Wow. No wonder Nagarjuna calls it more amazing than the amazing. So, my words also without inherent existence, but can thoroughly establish that things are without inherent existence. So, bottom of page 191, he's talking about us. Thus, if it is the case that one, when you induce ascertainment that phenomena do not have even a particle of inherent existence, that is to say, established by way of their own entities, you have no way to induce ascertainment in your own system with respect to the relationship of cause and effect, and must rely on others and so forth. Many people say, oh, we Prāsaṅgikas have no system. We merely use the ideas, the notions, and so forth of others. That's what it means, rely on others. Or two, when you induce ascertainment well in your own system with respect to cause and effect, that's us too, isn't it? You have no way to induce ascertainment through your own system with respect to an absence of inherent existence. Then he says here, if you have these two problems, and we have both of them, so it's like my saying early on in the course, the Dalai Lama, sitting in his chair that day and saying, and you look into emptiness, you go to this kind of extreme nihilism. You look into cause and effect, you go to an extreme of existence, right? You look into emptiness again, you're back down to extreme nihilism. And then extreme of existence. So, you can see in the middle of 192, therefore, knowing that for those of weak mind, the depths of this doctrine are difficult to realize, Shakyamuni's mind turned away from teaching this doctrine, did not teach for 45 days, which of course is accepted as his first teaching, in that he's communicating the extreme difficulty of realizing what he has realized. Nagarjuna's precious garland, I think, is great. It's one I often bring up in my Buddhist meditation class. When the body, which is unclean, coarse, an object of direct perception, right? We can see it. It's not like emptiness, some abstruse topic that's difficult to get at. It's unclean because this smell is not coming from somewhere else, right? It's coming from inside it to outside. Coarse, well, I guess it's, if you're going to give a commentary, you can't say, well, it's coarse because it's an object of direct perception, because he says that next. You have to give some other reason why it's coarse. That would be a reason why it's coarse. Subtle would mean it's difficult to comprehend. Coarse would mean it's easy to comprehend because it's an object of direct perception. But here you have to give it a different meaning. And always appearing, it's always around. If this doesn't remain in your mind as impure, then how could the excellent doctrine of emptiness easily enter your mind? If you can't even figure out that your body's dirty, how could such a profound doctrine as emptiness easily enter the mind? And so he says this is the reason why Buddha turned away from teaching the doctrine in the beginning. That was many years ago, be about 1963 or 4, visited a woman whose son was a friend of mine and had died of liver cancer. And at that time, you couldn't even use the word cancer. I just knew he had died of something. And even some mention, I don't know how it came up, about the uncleanliness of the body. When that came up, it was like utter turnoff. Even though her son's body had turned against him, and that's part of being unclean. But that's our culture. We have revolted against the culture of the dirty body that is to be denied in all respects in favor of whatever, right? We've so thoroughly revolted against that it's hard for Nagarjuna's rather simple example to have any impact. Even if we are people who, if you puke, I shouldn't say these words. It's not dangerous. If we puke, it's not. If we puke right here, right? Nobody's going to consider it to be clean. Thinking, saying that in front of you is like, one day I was in a plane with George Dreyfus, and it was a small plane leaving Charlottesville in a storm. And I was ready to puke. He said, "I bet you don't want to think about a hamburger right now." He couldn't contain himself. I thought, oh, shit, I didn't answer. So now look at this. Unlike that, some mistake 193, first new paragraph, the meaning of statements in certain valid texts that settle the lack of inherent existence through the reasoning, analyzing whether pots and so forth are one or different from their parts. When, upon analyzing whether a pot, for instance, is any of its parts, the lip, the neck, and so forth, is the lip the pot? No. Is the neck of the pot the part? I can't even say this. Is the belly of the pot the part? The pot? They don't find any of them to be the pot. Thus they think there's no pot. That's where we are, isn't it? Though we haven't done this particular analysis. Then they analyze the analyzer. Ascertain there's no analyzer. This is the proper procedure in first and this is how you do it. You ask these questions, then you turn, you get some idea of that emptiness, then you turn and you ascertain the emptiness of this one. This is how you do it. It's just that the person's drawing the wrong conclusion somehow. There's also no analyzer. That time thinking, if an analyzer is not to be found, who is it that knows pots and so forth exist? The 8th Karmapa, Migyo Doje, saying just this sort of thing. You apply this Madhyamaka analysis to, like, realization of emptiness. And you're not going to find it. Therefore, we have no propositions that are our own. I'm not saying that the 8th Karma was wrong, but Tsong was not making this up. We're not the only ones who have these types of thoughts. Who is it that knows pots and so forth do not exist? Hence they say, things neither exist No, not exist. Can't say they exist, because when you use this analysis, you don't find them. Can't say they don't exist, because when you analyze the analyzer, you don't find the analyzer, and thus who could say that you don't find the pot? Pot. And Tsong-kha-pa says it's a complete put down. You can see why, there's tension. Were one to posit the inducing of such erroneous ascertainment by way of certain counterfeit reasonings as having gained the Madhyamaka view, then the gaining of the view would appear to be a very easy thing to do. So thus he turns to, you've got to be able to understand that the meaning of emptiness is the meaning of dependent arising, yet within the context of utter unfindability. He's not denying that at all. He's not saying, as soon as you don't find the object, turn and reflect on dependent arising. I mean, the meditative equipoise is called space-like. Why? Because you don't find anything, right? There's just this absence, which is like space is an absence. Oh. So, in the middle of the page, it seems that you Tibetans who are misinterpreting Madhyamaka are saying, when things have no inherent existence, then what else is there? I mean, what is there? What could exist? Therefore, it's not necessary to affix a qualification such as ultimately to the object of negation. This is so difficult, because this is just what Candrakīrti says. He argues with Bhavaveka about the beginning of the second chapter, because Bhavaveka says, puts in ultimately, Candrakīrti pointedly does not. But what is it that's being refuted both ultimately and conventionally? Is it the pot or going, which is what you're looking for? It's the inherent existence of that. That's Tsong-kha's point. That doesn't exist either ultimately or conventionally. And that's Candrakīrti's meaning when he says the qualification ultimately doesn't need to be given, because whatever is refuted both in terms of both truths, ultimate truth and conventional truth. But that ain't easy. So at the bottom, you might think, you might erroneously, you as a jerk, might erroneously think the assertion of the Master Candrakīrti that the presentation of single existence and nirvana, bondage leading solo, are made conventionally. And we also assert these conventionally, hence there's no fault. You know, people say, oh, this is asserted conventionally. You think, what does that mean? Stupidly? 195, line 3. Because according to you, you jerk, the reasoning which refutes inherent existence must refute that inherent existence even conventionally. That's true. And because you assert that the reasoning which refutes inherent existence refutes also bondage, release, and so forth, that's what's wrong. Did our analysis refute going? No. It refuted only the inherent existence of going. Once you think this, it's very clear that in your system, really, bondage, release, and so forth are refuted even conventionally. Even if you claim that you're asserting these conventionally, once you say that ultimate analysis refutes them, then you can't even refute them, assert them conventionally. So at the top of page 197, page line 2, they must be, you jerks, are holding that all these objects must be refuted conventionally. And at that time, all the presentations of single existence in nirvana will be refuted even conventionally. Such a Madhyamaka is unprecedented, never existed before.
That's similar to what happened to us too. When
Yes,
we were going.
yes. And it's very important to recognize. And to recognize that we are in the position of the opponent. And I don't know, we may like listening to what he has to say, but we can't figure out what it means because we don't know the difference between going and the inherent existence of God. So the bottom of the page, of page 200, an opponent, a Buddhist opponent, is saying in line 4 of that index, the fruition, Buddha himself spoke of the fruition of actions that are done by yourself as being experienced by yourself. And you dirty Madhyamaka, are deprecating actions and their effects. Therefore, you are the chief of nihilists. In Tibet nowadays, when you want to smear someone, you call them red. Red. Marble. Marble image. It's red. Probably red. That's the smear. And here, it's nihilist. So, Candrakīrti answers, we are not nihilists. We illuminate the path free from the two extremes, the path that leads to the city of nirvana, city on the hill. It's the same metaphor. Because you see cities as opposed to being, are places where intelligence and the liberality of the intellect is finding its place in the old days. And the country was just totally hopeless. If you stay out in the country, it's just absolutely miserable because you are bound by rigid, stupid conventions. This is how the country was viewed. I remember Richard Robinson, who first taught me this. That's very true. The city was the place of freedom. Whereas we tend to think, now you, like me, you can live in the country, have all the advantages of the city and so forth. And not the horrendous disadvantage. So you have to understand the context of the metaphor, why a term like city would be used for nirvana. We also do not propound actions, agents, effects, and so forth do not exist. What do we propound? We posit these do not inherently exist. So it's quite clear, isn't it? In the middle of 202, right in the middle of the first new paragraph, they object thus. Since in their system, well, let's go back. Even though you Madhyamakas say we do not propound non-existence, we propound an absence of inherent existence, you still can't get rid of the fault that I mentioned earlier, that if there's no inherent existence, cause and effect are not feasible. That's what people keep saying to the Madhyamakas, especially to Prāsaṅgikas. They object this way, because in their system, there's no difference between the two, an absence of inherent existence and non-existence. And we have to see, yes, I can see what that means. Because you're not finding going, or chair, table, and so forth. And how you composite some existence of going that isn't the one we refuted, I just don't know. You follow? So we can't make a difference between existence and inherent existence, either. We keep saying dependent arising, dependent arising. Very interesting at the bottom of the page. Last two lines, page 202. It has the meaning of the arising of effects, whose nature is similar to a magician's illusions, mirages, reflections, cities of scent eaters. This is translated sometimes as fata morgana, emanations and dreams. You see, you were saying these things have effects. And Candrakīrti is declaring that all of these are like them. So then, in what sense are they like them? And is there a sense that they're not like them? This is pretty much how he leaves it. The Gelugpa scholars go on and then say, well, it's like a dream, and that it appears, just as a dream appears to be, a dream of a city or something, appears to be a city, but isn't. So these things appear to be inherently existent, but aren't. Not that the table appears to be a table, but is not. Okay, many different ways of saying this. So, on page 205, the middle of the first new paragraph, we do not propound such and such as non-existent. This is what the people who claim they're upholding the sutra statements of not exist, not exist, not both exist and not exist, not neither exist nor not exist. Yoba mayin, meba mayin. Yome niga mayin, yome niga mayimba mayin. You should learn that. Yoba mayin, say it.
Yoba mayin,
Meba mayin,
meba mayin,
yome niga mayin,
yoma niga mayin,
yome niga mayimba mayin.
niga mayimba mayin.
So he says, when you say these things, you're propounding only a collection of contradictions. Wow! Right in the teeth. And do not set forth even slightly the meaning of the middle way. Wow! These huge traditions that obviously came from India, right? There's no question that sociologically, economically, eventually, politically, these statements were used to, we've got the truth, you don't, therefore, you ought to bring your children to our monastery. We're a suitable place to give money to. It's a waste if you give it to these other people. And politically, why we should take over the country rather than somebody else. Which I think everybody says that Tsong-kha-pa, during his own life, was not interested in politics. Everybody, it seems to phrase him that way. But once you get a definition of the truth as being here and not there, it's certainly going to be used that way. Or probably will be used that way by a number of people. But then the amusing thing that happens within Gelug, as I've said, is that the individual colleges start saying, we have the truth. As one of my teachers said, when I was younger, meaning about 20 or so, I considered the other people of the other colleges to be like non-Buddhists. He's saying, well, in Losaling College, you got to work it out. Huh? I thought, just don't spit on the floor. Finally, he just made the noise of speaking. Losaling College. At Yale. Hey, now that UVA is ranked better than even Berkeley. Berkeley? Now we can also do it with Duke, though, because we've got to get him beneath us. What, Duke is about 6 or 7, isn't it? And UVA is 17? Duke. Shit. Disgusting. It's like, but it's quite like teams, right? The Duke basketball team, they suck. Whatever that means. So, sort of 2/3 down the next paragraph on 205, second new paragraph. Since you're investigating with respect to something, going, say, whether it exists inherently or not, you must assert that the possibilities are limited to those two, inherently exists or doesn't. If there were a third possibility not included in those two, it would not be reasonable to investigate which of these two is right. You with me? Murti, for instance, says, Madhyamakas do not accept the law of the excluded middle. Tsong-kha-pa is clearly saying they accept the law of the excluded middle. He says that the Madhyamakas are freelance debaters, and they never come to a conclusion. They're just going around, whatever idea you have, I'll knock it down based on your own terms. And you see, in terms of realization, there'll be no time then when you could realize. And he doesn't posit realization of anything. I don't think so. I read his book at least 4 times. But it was 4 or 6 times. It was fantastic. Tremendously helpful for me. And I wrote my own meditation on emptiness in response. That's the historical setting. He doesn't talk about realization of emptiness and the process of doing so. Therefore, I entitled it Meditation on Emptiness. That's where it came out. I never said that, I don't think, in the book. It's almost too close for me to say. So you can see why that would be the case if you're a freelance debater, just going around knocking down everybody's opinion. So don't posit any time of realizing emptiness, attaining path of seeing, attaining path of meditation, attaining Buddhahood, and so forth. You see, all these have become impossible. So he was, oh, it's 3:20. Bye. So, before going on to read the other material, I would suggest finishing the Napa reading or, rereading it, because with this background, it ought to be very rich. And if you find the extensive section too extensive, concentrate on the smaller section, just the Tsong-kha-pa version. And then we'll go on to Path to the Middle. Illumination means the translation in the rear, and Path to the Middle is titled the whole thing, which means Yeshe Thupten's commentary on the section that you read for today. So that's 131 to 145. Then Emptiness Yoga 36 to 122. Now you've already read 55 to 67, just pointing it out. I realize the redundance of it. 36 to 122, the redundance of 12 pages of it. And 360 to 372. Again, 2 coordinated parts. Meditation on Emptiness 43 to 46. And 625 to 636.